Gibby!
If you've ever watched iCarly, you're probably familiar with Gibby, the wacky comedic relief who's most known for taking his shirt off and shouting his name. But did you know in 2013 there was a pilot for Gibby to have his own spin-off series? It was produced at the same time as Sam and Cat, which featured Jeanette McCurdy and Ariana Grande, which is so wild to think about in retrospect. Unfortunately, the Gibby show wasn't picked up, but as we'll learn in this video, it probably was for the best, for everyone involved.
Looking back, I'm very glad it was canned. I wouldn't want to be playing Gibby up until like my 20s.
Right.
So in this video, we're gonna watch the found media pilot for the Gibby show, what we can take away from it, and I'll even talk a bit about the actor behind Gibby, Noah Monk, because he's a really interesting guy with an interesting story with and beyond Gibby. Up until October of 2023, we've only had a script of the pilot episode for Gibby, and honestly, I don't think there's another piece of lost media I've wanted to see more than this. So I'm excited to watch and talk about it today. There's some wild moments, both good and terrible, but I don't want to spoil them, so let's just hop right into the video. The pilot starts with Gibby in a classroom where his teacher has been bitten on the butt by Gibby's pet weasel. Principal Franklin from iCarly makes a return and tells Gibby to help out at the middle school instead of giving him Saturday detention for his weasel shenanigans. Gibby seems to be a bit of a mini celebrity in the context of the show, as many people recognize him from his iCarly fame, and this brings me to one of the bigger points I wanted to discuss in this video beyond the Gibby pilot. Gibby's actor, Noah Monk, has a complex relationship with the character Gibby. As the metaphorical and sometimes literal punching bag of iCarly, Noah Monk has mentioned that a lot of people solely refer to him as Gibby, even recounting a time he was out to eat and was harassed to take his shirt off from a guy yelling at him from across the restaurant. Noah Monk has acted in several other shows and movies with aspirations to work in more adult comedies and dramas, and I think it's hard to break the Gibby persona people associate him with, in part because of how goofy his character was. Other stars of Dan Schneider's shows have moved on to more serious roles, like Josh Peck was in Oppenheimer. He was the guy that pressed the button to detonate the test nuke, and the whole time I'm watching this really dramatic scene of testing a nuclear bomb, I'm thinking, how many people in this theater know that's Josh from Drake and Josh? I really wanted him to say something like, "It's spherical! Spherical!" He was also in Meme Creek, where he plays this bully with some learning disabilities who swears a lot, so people would always pass around this clip like, oh my gosh, Josh from Drake and Josh just swore.
A bitch, Sam, alright? And I hope you f***ing go to hell.
Don't make things worse, George.
Shut the fuck up, Millie, you f***ing stupid chap.
And when I said Gibby is also a literal punching bag, not just metaphorical punching bag, you may already know this, but that clip I showed at the beginning of Gibby falling from the ceiling is real. Well, pretty real. A stunt double of Gibby actually falls here from the ceiling, and they decided to do this like a practical effect where the stunt double falls from the ceiling for realsies, and despite there being a thin mat under this floor, the stuntman broke his ribs on this stunt. Knowing this information and context, it's hard to watch this clip, but when we watched it at the beginning, it just seemed like a funny random clip, right? Also, looking through other shows and movies Noah Monk was in, he was in a mob parody movie on Nick with James Gandolfini. I gotta talk about this movie sometime. Let me know if you'd like to see a video on Nicky Deuce, because this sounds amazing. So back to the episode, Gibby volunteers at the middle school to avoid Saturday detention, and he sees 4 kids getting bullied at lunch, even saving them from a chicken nugget flying at them in slow motion. This save kinda doesn't matter though, since they've already been pelted by dozens of chicken nuggets already, but Gibby tells the bullies that the social outcasts are his friends and they shouldn't be bullied. This leads to the kids assuming Gibby is actually their friend, and Gibby feels guilty, offering to hang out with them after school, even turning down these 2 cheerleaders who want to show Gibby their new moves they're practicing. Moving on. They take Gibby to this rec center that seems to be the primary location this show would have taken place at. It's an interesting location. I think it offers a lot of flexibility for what they can do in episodes, because they can make the rec center as expansive as they'd like. For example, in the pilot, they play trampoline dodgeball, which means this rec center just has a trampoline park somewhere in its facility. I have no idea where it would be, but it's believable enough, you know? There's a lot of parallels that can be drawn to a show like Sam and Cat, since their pilots were produced at the same time. Like in Sam and Cat, they had a robot restaurant they'd hang out at a lot, and both locations have dubious technology. While Sam and Cat had these robots, the rec center has a machine called Exer Fries, in which you have to exercise to unlock the fries. They don't even acknowledge it, you just see a couple kids in the background using it, so it's there, I guess. So Gibby hangs out with the 4 social outcasts, who are referred to by their peers as those 4 unpopular kids. And I think it's an interesting character cast and dynamic for a show. Like looking at other Dan Schneider shows, Drake and Josh has 2 stepbrothers, iCarly is 3 friends, Victorious is a class of performing arts students, but Gibby is one older kid mentoring a slightly younger group. So let's quickly get to know this group of characters. Arguably the most interesting of the 4 is Marcon, who claims to be a robot sent from the future. It's hard to tell if he's serious about this or not, but I'd really love if in the iCarly universe there's just a straight up Terminator. The other 2 boys probably could have been boiled down into one character, as they have similar traits of anxiety. This guy Flip is just a total suck up, thanking people for the food they throw at him and constantly seeking validation from Gibby on how he should feel.
Hey, what's for my broccoli? It's really good. Nah, I don't like broccoli.
The name Flip is kind of funny though, like he flips his opinion based on what others think maybe. And Winston is extremely paranoid.
Don't worry. All flowers on Earth will be destroyed in the Great Ink-Star War of 2077.
I need to know if he's being so serious or not, because it'd be so cool to have a robot, please. It might have been cool to just have a paranoid suck-up and give room for another character to round out this cast, but they both have funny lines in the pilot, so I can't complain too much. And the last character is basically just a mini Sam from iCarly. Her dialogue is the funniest of the cast by a significant margin, probably because she says mean things like Sam, but with a lot more social ineptitude, so it's hard to tell if she's trying to be kinda mean or not.
Why do you ask that? Because I'm short for my age? You think you're perfect? Well, guess what? You're not.
Wow.
Like, that feels so real. I think everyone's had a moment where they've maybe sat at a random table or talked to a random person they don't know who just blows up and makes things super awkward out of nowhere. I don't know. Also, to be fair, she is extremely short. I wonder if they specifically seeked out super short kids so they could really drive home the point that Gibby is older than them and kinda mentoring them. I personally think this ensemble may be one of the bigger reasons why Gibby wasn't picked up to be an actual show. The other Dan Schneider shows I mentioned earlier all have very appealing characters. Sometimes they were cool like Drake or Sam, and other times they were goofy like Josh or Kat. But above all, they were very likable. I just have a hard time seeing people enjoy these 4 odd social rejects as regular characters for a whole show, rather than characters of the week, kinda. They just don't have that same level of mass appeal. Character and cast concerns don't just stop at the social outcast group though. I've read about people saying that Gibby was a bit off in this pilot, or a little too serious, and historically that's been a product of turning wacky side characters into a main character spin-off show. I've read stories from writers in a writing class I took about how in the show Cheers, Frasier was a pretty wacky character, and he was so popular he got his own spin-off show called Frasier. But you can't have your protagonist be so wacky, it makes the show a little too detached and the audience needs an anchor they can sympathize with, not just as a moral compass, but just to keep their feet on the ground at a minimum. So what they did was they took a lot of the wackiness from Frasier and gave it to Frasier's brother. It almost begs the question, why make wacky side characters main characters if you're gonna have to water them down anyways? But to Gibby's credit, rather Noah's credit, I think he's actually a pretty good actor and does a good job in the role despite needing to be more of a mentor rather than the guy who jumps on tables and takes his shirt off. So I'd like to present to you the funniest transition I've ever seen in a TV show.
I can't understand why you guys aren't more popular.
Of any song in the whole world, why did they pick Whistle by Flo Rida? To be fair, it was 2012, and I remember a lot of people would discuss where they were when they first found out that the Flo Rida song, asking someone to blow his whistle, is a euphemism for, asking someone to blow his whistle. It feels like an extremely random song to use, but I suppose this was being produced in 2012, and I can't believe the song came out that year and not like 2008. But yeah, hearing this song in a Nickelodeon show just had me kind of losing my mind. Another character that shows up in this pilot is the counselor at the rec center, who I swear I've seen in something before, but I can't put my finger on it. If you happen to know what else he's in, I'd really appreciate if you could let me know in the comments. His character is supposed to be just kinda dumb, like he announces a lost and found for his own hat that he lost, but one of the craziest visuals I have ever seen was when he needed to inflate the basketballs and put sunscreen on the kids, but mixed this up. You may be able to anticipate the horror I'm about to show you.
You put sunscreen on the basketballs and look at those little
Good lord. Seeing this visual just after hearing Gibby chill in the Flowrider was like a 1-2 punch. Like, Dan Schneider has had a lot of controversy and suspicion surrounding him due to many questionable things he's made his actresses do. At the same time, Schneider's humor has always ridden a fine line between LOL random and suppressed fetish. Like, when you have Ariana Grande sucking her own toe, it's just not a good look. I really hope my mom isn't watching this video. Jeanette McCurdy, who played Sam in iCarly, talks about how Schneider would do inappropriate things like giving the underage cast alcohol or rubbing Jeanette's shoulders, so while a lot of jokes could just be innocent and random, it's unavoidable to watch Dan Schneider's shows without a lens of skepticism. Noah Monk was on a podcast with Moist Critical where he even said his parents had Google notifications on for their son, in which they were notified of him being posted on inappropriate, illegal adult websites. And while that might not directly be Dan Schneider's fault, I think there's a certain level of responsibility in working with child actors for their safety and protection. Anyways, getting back to the pilot, Gibby hangs out at the rec center with these kids, but they don't do anything fun, they just sit around all day. To inject some fun into the afternoon, Gibby gets them to play trampoline dodgeball. It's a little bit memed on in the show like these two things don't go together, but in high school I used to play trampoline dodgeball with my friends on Friday nights, and it was so much fun. Honestly though, I probably would have gone even if there was no trampolines. In fact, it almost felt like sometimes we were playing in spite of the trampolines. We get this dodgeball sequence in which the kids get traumatized, and it's not a terribly funny montage, but I do like Winston grabbing this giant bucket of popcorn before it gets knocked out of his hands. The kind of stupid counselor shows up to help teach the kids dodge a lean, but jumps so high on the trampoline that he jumps through the ceiling. Oh my god, that's terrifying. Like, I could see this being a game over screen in a horror game. The lady who manages the rec center is panicking because she needs to go to the hospital with the rec center guy who just nearly decapitated himself. But she can't leave the rec center unattended. Gibby, who's attracted to the lady, offers to run the rec center in her absence.
Okay, you're hired. Make sure to watch out. Stay pretty.
And now that you're hired, Gibby, that's officially workplace harassment. As Gibby's closing up, a couple of robbers enter the building and tie Gibby up, asking him where they keep the money. They even tell him they're gonna break his thumbs, and that made me abnormally squeamish. Like, ugh, god. Fortunately, the future robot boy forgets his jacket at the rec center, and the kids come back and see Gibby being held hostage. They also ask why a robot needs a jacket, but he says he was programmed to perceive temperature fluctuations, in case you were wondering about that. I really hope he's a robot for real. What if the kids pulled up and Marcon just turned into a transformer on their asses? That unironically would have been so cool. But incorporating the lessons from their mentor Gibby about dodge a lean and standing up for your friends, the kids end up throwing dodgeballs at the thieves, and Mini Sam whacks them with a fly swatter she wielded in the dodgeball montage. In classic Gibby fashion, he gets hyped and takes his shirt off. The boys follow suit, taking their shirts off, which causes the robbers to turn their heads to Mini Sam. Why did they look at her? Like, if you expect her to follow suit, you wouldn't want to look at her, you filthy animals. I forgot to mention before, Dan Schneider is no longer with Nickelodeon due to an internal investigation as of 2021. They say it was due to verbal harassment and outbursts, but from what Jeanette McCurdy says in her autobiography, as well as the fact Nickelodeon offered her $300,000 in hush money, as well as all the damn feet, we can come to our own conclusions. Gibby thanks his new friends for saving him, and they embrace in a shirtless Gibby squeeze. Thank God that's the end. Okay, let's wrap it up. So that's how the Gibby special ended. As this pilot wasn't picked up for a show, unlike Sam and Cat, which ran for 35 episodes, and seems to have its own dilemmas behind the scenes, but the Gibby story doesn't end here. Gibby didn't return to iCarly to reprise his role in the 2021 reboot, and with the conclusion/cancellation of this reboot after its 3rd season, which ended last month, it seems the door on the iCarly universe may have finally shut forever. And it does sadden me, but it feels great to have this final piece of the puzzle kinda solved. I can understand why Noah didn't return to reprise his role, like when he said he was kinda grateful Gibby didn't get picked up. I believe Noah wanted to separate himself from the role of Gibby, especially to create his own videos with aspirations to work in more adult comedies and dramas. I don't blame him, especially considering the stories of fans acting weird towards Noah and conflating him and Gibby, but the iCarly reboot did have some more serious and candid moments, like what if Gibby was a really serious character in the reboot? That could have been funny and interesting and cool. Noah Monk actually makes his own videos on YouTube under the channel Sad World, and I actually think they're really funny. They're a bit avant-garde in their editing and content, and if I had to compare it to anything I've seen before, I guess I'd kinda say it's like if Andy Milonakis was on Adult Swim. Visually, I haven't really seen anything like it either. Well, maybe Problem Solvers, which I will defend to my dying breath, so don't take that as an insult. But I think Noah is a genuinely funny guy, and it's really cool to hear about how he's evolved over the years, from resenting Gibby to acknowledging that the fans see him as Gibby might be a bit delusional, but there is a silver lining to seeing how much he's impacted these people's lives. Overall, I enjoyed the Gibby pilot. It had some really funny jokes.
When you got that haircut, was that how you wanted your hair to look?
And some pretty bad or weird moments. Maybe I'm giving it a bit too much credit due to the hype that this was actually found, because I've always wondered what it must have looked like. But yeah, the most controversial aspect is definitely the middle schoolers. It's hard for me to see them being well received by fans, and the network might not have seen them as anywhere as close to marketable as Sam and Cat or other shows. Like, there's a lot of Sam and Cat merch. It makes sense to have a t-shirt of them. And while there is a lot of ironic and post-ironic Gibby merch out there, like a bald Gibby tapestry that says Gibby requires coochie, I don't think there's much appeal for this show beyond Gibby, and making him the protagonist waters down some of the aspects that made Gibby Gibby. If you watched this video, I'd appreciate if you liked and subscribed. I have a lot more heat coming out soon, and I might just have to make a video about the Gibby James Gandolfini movie. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you next week. Alright, bye.